Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are looking at something that, honestly, if I saw it in a movie script, I'd probably say it was a bit too far-fetched.
A little too on the nose, maybe.
Exactly. But we are looking at a very real, very serious report that has just surfaced. We're talking about a directive that involves, well, the most elite tier of the U.S. military, a huge geopolitical shift, and of all places, Greenland.
Definitely one of those headlines that makes you, put down your coffee and read it again.
At least twice. So let's set the scene here. We're digging into a report from the Cult of Patreon, and they're citing a report published by the UK's Daily Mail.
Right.
And the central idea is just startling. According to these sources, President Donald Trump has ordered the Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, to create contingency plans for an invasion of Greenland.
And just to frame what we're trying to do in this deep dive, we're not just talking about a real estate deal gone wrong.
Yeah.
This has escalated way beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
We need to unpack how a proposal to, buy an island has allegedly turned into a directive for military action. And maybe more importantly, what this means for the stability of NATO.
Right. Because the sources we have, they are not treating this like satire. You might see a headline like Greenland invasion and laugh, but the tone in these documents is dead serious.
It is.
We're reading about political hawks, generals who are pushing back and pushing back hard, and European leaders who are basically sounding the alarm.
It really reads like a diplomatic crisis unfolding in real time, a collision of political will and military reality.
So, okay, let's unpack this. The headline is the order itself. Trump ordered JSC to prepare for a possible invasion. Now, for anyone listening who might not be a military buff, JSC isn't who you call to organize a parade.
No, definitely not.
Who are we talking about here?
So JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, is the absolute tip of the spear. We're talking Delta Force, SEAL Team 6. These are the units you call for, high-value target missions like the Bin Laden raid, or very specific, very covert direct action.
Okay, so asking them to draw up plans, that sends a very specific signal.
It does. I mean, if you ask the regular Army to plan something, you're talking logistics, supply lines, a massive visible operation. Asking JSOC implies a desire for something else.
Something faster.
Much faster. Maybe a decapitation strike or rapid seizure of key infrastructure. It implies a level of seriousness and secrecy that goes way beyond just, let's look at our options.
And what's really interesting, looking at the source, is who is driving this, because it doesn't seem to be coming from the Pentagon.
No.
The report points directly to political hawks inside the administration, led by White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller.
And that's a key detail. Stephen Miller is known as the architect of some of the administration's most hardline policies, but usually on things like immigration.
Right. He's not a guy I associate with Arctic naval strategy.
Exactly. So to see him as the reported driver of a military invasion plan for Greenland suggests this is being viewed through an ideological lens, not a traditional military one.
So what's the rationale? Why Greenland? Why now? The source says these advisors want to, and I'm quoting here, act quickly to seize the island. And the reason is that classic great power competition.
Get there before Russia or China.
Right. They want to get there before Russia or China can make a move.
And that's the stated rationale, yes. In a vacuum, it even makes a kind of strategic sense. The Arctic is melting, shipping lanes are opening up, there are rare earth minerals. But the timing mentioned in the report is crucial.
Yeah, I saw this in the notes. The report says this directive comes amid heightened tensions following a major event on January 3rd.
Right. This is the context you absolutely cannot ignore.
The source mentions a U.S. military operation in Venezuela that resulted in the capture of President Nicolas Maduro.
Which is a massive, massive deal.
I mean, we just kind of breezed past that, but capturing a sitting head of state, that's huge.
It's historic.
Yeah.
And it provides the psychological backdrop for the Greenland order. You have this successful, if incredibly aggressive, operation in South America just a couple of weeks earlier. The administration is likely feeling pretty emboldened.
They're riding high.
Exactly. They took a huge swing in Venezuela, and apparently it worked. So if you're one of these hawks, you're probably thinking, we just snatched a president in South America. Why can't we secure an island in the North Atlantic?
It sets a precedent.
It absolutely does. It suggests a much more aggressive foreign policy posture. If the administration feels international norms can be bent to secure U.S. interests, then moving on Greenland stops looking like a fantasy and starts looking like the next item on the checklist.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The people who would actually have to do the invading, the military, they don't seem to be on board at all.
Not even close, based on these reports.
We're seeing reports of really fierce internal resistance. The source quotes a diplomatic insider who was extremely blunt with the Daily Mail. They said, quote, "Generals think Trump's plan for Greenland is crazy and illegal."
That word illegal is doing a lot of work there.
Hold on, though. Presidents order military action all the time without, a formal declaration of war. Why would this specific plan be seen as illegal by the generals?
It comes down to who you're targeting. Greenland isn't a rogue state. It's an autonomous territory of Denmark. And Denmark is
A NATO ally.
a founding member of NATO, in fact.
So invading them is complicated.
Complicated is a massive understatement. An unprovoked military attack on a NATO ally has no domestic legal basis. Congress hasn't authorized war with Denmark, and it shatters international law and the North Atlantic Treaty itself.
So the military's argument is basically, sir, we can't legally attack a friend.
That's the core of it. And it gets even wilder when you see how desperate the generals apparently were to distract the president.
Oh, this part. The report says military leaders were trying to steer him toward less controversial operations. And get this, here's what they considered less controversial.
This part is just incredible.
They suggested intercepting Russian ghost ships, or even considering strikes against Iran.
Just stop and think about that for a second.
I am. It's mind-boggling.
We are in a situation where senior military commanders are sitting in rooms saying, hey, you know what? Maybe we should look at strikes on Iran, a heavily armed regional power, because that is the safer, more rational, less controversial option.
It sounds like a bad political thriller. Let's bomb Iran to avoid invading Greenland.
It just highlights how extreme the Greenland directive must seem to them. I mean, striking Iran is a major war scenario, but compared to invading a NATO ally, the generals apparently see that as a standard problem. Invading Greenland is just off the mat.
It puts it in stark perspective. But the president seems determined. The rhetoric is escalating. The source mentions comments Trump made to oil executives just last Friday. He told them, "We will do something about Greenland whether you like it or not."
Whether you like it or not, that's very direct.
It is. And then he dropped this ultimatum. If we can't do it the easy way, we'll do it the hard way.
The hard way. And when you've just asked JSC to draw up plans, that phrase takes on a very literal, very kinetic meaning. The easy way was offering to buy it.
And the hard way is sending in the operators. Exactly. And the world is listening. This brings us to the international fallout. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen warned that a U.S. attack on Greenland would mark the end of NATO.
And this raises the most important question of this entire deep dive. Is the end of NATO a bug, or is it a feature of the plan?
What do you mean by that? You think they want to end NATO?
Well, look at the diplomatic cables the report cites. They reveal a crucial detail. It says that Trump's hardliners allegedly view an occupation of Greenland as a way to force European allies to abandon the alliance.
Wait. Slow down, because that is some 4D chess right there.
It is.
I mean, if a president doesn't like NATO, they usually just talk about withdrawing. Why can't they just sign a paper and leave? Why go through all this?
Because of Congress. The cables describe this worst-case scenario, which leads to the destruction of NATO from within. The logic, apparently, is that Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, would never allow a formal withdrawal.
The front door is locked.
The front door is bolted shut.
Yeah.
So according to these sources, the hardliners are looking for the back door. The logic is, if the U.S. does something so outrageous, so contrary to the alliance's values, like invading a member state, what happens next?
Well, I assume Denmark calls for help under Article 5.
Exactly. An attack on one is an attack on all. So now, technically, Germany, France, the UK, they are all treaty-bound to defend Denmark.
Against the United States.
Right. The alliance collapses under the weight of that paradox. You effectively force the European members to walk away. You break the alliance because it becomes impossible for them to stay in it with you.
Wow. So it's like a suicide vest for the alliance.
That is what the diplomatic cables are suggesting. It's a way to bypass Congress and achieve a long-held goal of the America First, wing-ending U.S. involvement in NATO by creating a crisis that shatters the whole thing from the inside.
That is incredibly high stakes. It's not just about ice and minerals anymore. It's about the entire post-World War II security architecture.
Precisely. And that's why the European response has been so unified. They see the trap.
Let's talk about that response, because on January 6th, leaders from France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, the UK, and Denmark issued a joint statement.
That's a powerful bloc. That's basically the core of Europe.
And the statement was crystal clear. They said, Greenland belongs to its people. They said it is up to Denmark and Greenland and them alone to decide these matters.
But look at that list of countries again.
France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, UK, Denmark.
Poland is the one that really jumps out at me.
Why Poland?
Because Poland is historically one of the most pro-American nations in Europe. They rely heavily on the U.S. military to deter Russia. They usually stay quiet when Western Europe criticizes Washington.
Right.
For Poland to sign on to a letter like this, that shows you how deep the fracture is. If you've lost Warsaw on a military move, you have truly isolated yourself.
That's a great point. And it's not just the European capitals. The people of Greenland are speaking up too. The source notes that Greenland's 5 political parties issued a unified statement.
Which is very poignant.
They declared, "We don't want to be Americans. We don't want to be Danes. We want to be Greenlanders."
That's such a profound assertion of self-determination.
It really is. You know, in these big geopolitical games, the people living on the board can get forgotten, but they are making their voices heard very clearly.
Absolutely. They are rejecting this idea that they're just property to be traded or conquered. They're saying the future of Greenland must be decided by the Greenlandic people. It really complicates the narrative for anyone trying to frame this as just a simple real estate deal.
So we have the U.S. military pushing back, Europe pushing back, the Greenlandic people pushing back, but there's also alarm right here at home.
Yes, the source mentions a memorandum sent directly to the White House.
And this memo comes from 15 former high-ranking U.S. officials. What stands out is that it's a mix of people who served under both Democratic and Republican administrations.
That cross-party unity is so significant. Getting 15 high-ranking people from both sides to agree on anything these days is a minor miracle. It tells you the concern is about fundamental national strategy, not partisan politics.
And they didn't hold back. They called using military force against Greenland strategically reckless.
Strategically reckless. That's the key phrase. They're arguing this doesn't make America stronger. In fact, the memo warns that U.S. adversaries are, quote, reveling in the opportunities such a rupture would create.
Which makes total sense. I mean, if you're Russia or China and you see the U.S. tearing apart its own alliance system, what are you doing?
You're popping popcorn.
Exactly.
It's a gift.
It's the ultimate gift. You don't have to do anything. You just watch it happen. If the U.S. alienates its closest allies, the entire united front against other global powers just dissolves.
So where does this all leave us? We have a directive that seems to be moving forward despite almost universal opposition.
It's a collision course. On one side, you have this aggressive executive agenda driven by specific advisors. On the other side, you have international law, the NATO alliance, and the U.S. military's own judgment.
It feels like a stress test for the entire system.
Yeah.
You know, can the institutions hold back an executive order of this magnitude? That is the question. The military can drag its feet. Congress can protest. Allies can issue statements. But if the order stands, and if JSOC is really planning this, we are in uncharted territory.
It really makes you think about how fragile these things we take for granted really are. We just assume NATO is permanent. We assume you can't just invade a friendly country in 2026.
And this report suggests those assumptions are being challenged at the highest level. Which brings us back to that strategy in the cables. If the chaos is the point, if breaking the alliance is the actual goal, then all this resistance might just be fueling the fire.
Like a self-fulfilling prophecy of isolationism.
It is.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought. We talked about how the hardliners allegedly want to break NATO because Congress won't let them leave formally.
The backdoor strategy.
Right. So if that strategy is real, if the plan is to intentionally break an alliance because you can't legally exit it, what does that mean for the future of all other U.S. alliances?
That's the billion-dollar question.
Is this a blueprint? Could it be applied to the security treaty with Japan or South Korea? If the hard way becomes the standard way to exit an agreement you don't like, the map of the world could look very, very different very soon. If you can break NATO, you can break anything.
It's a pivotal moment. The precedent set here could echo for decades.
Thank you for diving deep with us today. This is obviously a developing story and one we will be watching very, very closely.
Absolutely. Keep your eyes open.
Until next time, stay curious.